Welcome, everyone. I'm Tracy Fitzpatrick, and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at Netcom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's event, exploring the crucial role of SOC Analysts in cybersecurity. Presenting today's topic is Dr. James Stanger. He is the Chief Technology Evangelist of CompTIA. He has 20 years of experience in IT, working as a security consultant, security analyst, and penetration tester. Having a vast knowledge of cybersecurity, James has developed various certification programs and designed curricula for university and learning center education programs. He's also a recognized writer of courses on the topics of security, network, administration, web development, Linux, and many more. James is also an award-winning author, blogger, and presenter. He's written titles for O'Reilly Media, McGraw-Hill, Prentice Hall, IBM Wiley, and others. He's also a regular contributor to various technical journals, including Admin Magazine, Linux, and more. Now, please bear in mind that this is an overview of a very robust topic. We offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored to your specific requirements. If you are interested in a further discussion, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you'll get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. Netcom Learning helps customers build innovative learning organizations by achieving a smarter workforce, adapting to change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We do have 9 practice areas in which we specialize. They encompass people, process, and technology training. And today's presentation is from the security practice area. Netcom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio of courses for the topic being covered today. Our upcoming classes include various trainings on the given courses. You can also access a variety of marketing assets, such as the free training and blogs, by clicking on the available event handout. These offerings can be found with a simple search on our website at netcomlearning.com. In today's session, our presenter, James Stanger, Chief Technology Evangelist at CompTIA, will share his expertise and insights into the crucial role of SOC analysts in cybersecurity. You will also discover how these skilled professionals contribute to protecting organizations from cyber threats and learn about the evolving landscape of cybersecurity in 2023. And now I would like to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To begin with, you do have the option to view in full screen by clicking on the full screen button on the right side of the GoToWebinar viewer. Simply hit the escape key to exit the full screen. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters. Feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters here in the questions pane, and we will address them at the end of the session. And to get the best out of today's events, we've included the slides, courses we talk about, and marketing assets in the handouts section of your GoToWebinar viewer. You may refer to them at any time to get a better understanding of today's topic. And we do realize that some of you may have to leave early and want to let you know that as you do leave the session today, you will be presented with a short survey. We would like to request for you to take a quick moment to participate in that survey. Your feedback really helps us understand your learning experience and improve our future sessions for you. The survey answers are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 representing outstanding and 1 representing poor. And now I'd like to pass this over to our trainer to present today's topic. Hey, James, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm here to talk to you today about the crucial role that security operations centers play in cybersecurity, and more importantly, the role that analysts play in cybersecurity. My name is James Stanger. I'm Chief Technology Evangelist at CompTIA. I've done a lot of work in the security operations arena. I've done a lot of work in security analytics and threat hunting as a worker. Also some data analytics, a lot of pen testing in Linux. So I represent CompTIA, and if you don't know who CompTIA is a global not-for-profit IT education company and trade association. We have members. Some of them are companies as small as a managed service provider just down the road. Some are huge managed service providers. Some are companies like Ricoh or Dell, very large companies. And we listen very carefully to the IT profession, and we represent them worldwide. And I've been lucky enough in my travels as Chief Technology Evangelist to talk to hiring managers about, for example, security operations centers. So first of all, we're going to talk today about what a SOC is, okay? Why it's important. And more importantly, why should you care about it? Because it's a heck of a series of job roles that I'd like to talk to you about. So, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at Netcom or at CompTIA. My email is jstanger@comptia.org, for example. But we're going to talk about vital skills in the Security Operations Center. So join along with me to learn about what it means to be a security analyst and the essential skills that you need to learn. So first of all, what is security operation? What does a SOC analyst look like? What does SOC analytics look like? And what you're looking at is actually a picture of a tool, a specific tool called Security Onion. There are so many different tools that you can use out there as a security analyst, QRadar and Splunk, and there's so many, even packet capture tools. But rather than talk about just the tools that are there, I think it's more important to talk about the people, right? So I want to talk to you today about a few security operations center analysts that I've known over the years. One of the first ones there, he's at the bottom right there in this picture. That's Chris Cochran. He's a former U.S. Marine, used to work for the NSA, used to work for Netflix, many other organizations. He runs an outfit called Hacker Valley on the side, but he works at Huntress Labs. He is an example of a security operations center analyst. So you're looking at a face of a SOC analyst. There's another one, Andres Silva. He lives in the UK. He's a former engineer, and he is now a SOC analyst. You're looking at a team of security operations center analysts. Those folks are from India. So worldwide, folks, we need security operations center analysts. And I just thought I'd show a human face of what, right? What a SOC analyst does. At CompTIA, we have elements of security operations center analytics, and we do that for a living. We have, for example, the CompTIA Information Sharing Association organization, an analysis organization, the CompTIA ISAO. That's the term that's used. It's an information sharing and analysis organization. That's an essential part of security analytics. The reason I bring up the CompTIA ISAO, as well as these faces that you saw, is at CompTIA, we not only talk about this stuff, we do this stuff, okay? We don't just teach about it, we actually make it happen. And we're actually share information with hundreds of managed service providers and companies around the world. But I want you to think about these names again, or these names and these people, because they all started learning about security operations centers by learning about CompTIA. Back in the day, Chris was not just born a security analyst. Neither was Andres. Neither was this team in India. They learned step by step and bit by bit. And that's the first step, first lesson I want you to learn. So from Bangkok, Thailand, and this is a gentleman named Amorn Chomchoy. He is the vice chancellor of the NCSA Thailand. In other words, he is responsible for all of the incident response that goes on in Thailand. Back in 2017, 2018, they were terribly hacked in Thailand, a lot of the banks, and they stood up security operations centers. And I was lucky enough last fall, it was September timeframe, I went over there and helped teach a lot of his team members about security analytics. There's another person named Kat Self. She lives in the Washington, D.C. area. She works for an organization called MITRE, huge nonprofit organization. They do a tremendous amount of work with various organizations, including the U.S. government, She looks for unique threats and she works with data sets. That's one of the first things I want you to think about. In addition to the faces that I'm showing you, a security operations center analyst works with data sets. And that's a fancy way of saying they work with information or data. I'll start with the raw data. Log files, okay, that come from intrusion detection devices or from an endpoint. By endpoint, this is my mobile phone here, okay? That's an endpoint. So you get all sorts of log files and data, and it's stored in a database. It's stored in spreadsheets. It's stored in packet captures, right? Those are all data sets, right? That's what these folks do, right? And I don't want to oversimplify this, but they work with it. And what they do, right, is they spend time turning that raw data into actionable information. So there's a difference between data, the random stuff that just kind of gets stored somewhere, and information that you can turn around and tell your boss, hey, I'm seeing a trend. Here is an attack. Because that's what Security Operations Center analysts do. They look for trends, important trends. So they not only show the what, hey, there's an attack. Well, so what? They show the so what. Well, it's an attack on a specific vulnerability that our organization has. Here's how we can respond to that, right? So there are some elements of what a SOC analyst does, but I want to show you a couple of SOC analysts that I know who live in the Pacific Northwest, where I live, around Seattle. Chris Hunt is an IT manager. He works for the Port of Grays Harbor. That means that he oversees a lot of tanker ships that come in. A lot of times they're full of cars from Japan, for example, right? A lot of goods that come in from Asia and around the world. He's interested in monitoring operational technology, and that's a fancy way of saying he monitors the software that operates the ships, the cranes, the docking tools, and things that allow the transfer of goods from places around the world from a ship onto a dock and vice versa. He's very interested in threat detection as his job. He's very interested in making sure that he responds well to some sort of threat, some sort of attack. Now, there's another security operations analyst here. Her name is Christina Cobb. She's my former scuba diving instructor. Can you believe that? So she's a great scuba diver, but she's also very good at taking a deep dive into data sets, right? Very good at doing analytics. And her interest is a little bit different than Chris's. Chris wants to monitor operational technology to make sure it runs well and it's not getting hacked. She's really interested in making sure that her healthcare organization that she is responsible for securing doesn't get hit by ransomware attacks, right? That's a real big problem around the world in many industries, but especially in the healthcare industry. One of those reasons is because it's really hard to update a lot of the equipment that hospitals use, X-ray machines, defibrillators, I mean, whatever equipment you can think that helps monitor somebody's heart, or if there's a MRI machine that needs to be used, all that stuff is run using software, operational technology again. But it's especially susceptible to ransomware, okay? And that's her job, to try to find a good response to that. But she does more than just responding to things, like ransomware attacks. She also needs to look to make sure that her healthcare organization is compliant to various standards. And there are a lot of standards in the healthcare industry. There's HIPAA, for example. And that's basically a standard that says, if her organization has James Stanger's data, is it being secured? Okay. So there can be incident response, not just with ransomware with that, but is James's information somehow being leaked inadvertently, accidentally? Is there a hacker stealing that data actively? So she does compliance and governance and all sorts of incident response. So these are just examples of people that I wanted to show you who actually do this stuff for a living. Hiring managers who are going to hire you or upskill you are looking for more than just the ability to respond to a ransomware attack, or the ability to monitor attacks on operational technology, or to even look at data sets. They're looking for confidence. And I don't want to overgeneralize here, but they want to move forward with confidence. Well, how does that happen? Well, take a look at the picture of these people. Some of these people, especially that person with the beard there, if you can see them, and these women in front here, they are all hiring managers, and they represent companies like UPS, right? They mail things, right? They're very interested in security. If their systems go down, you don't get packages, and then we have cultural chaos, okay? There's Coca-Cola. which is very important for me because I have to have my Diet Coke on an hourly basis. But companies such as UPS, Coca-Cola, State Farm, companies like Veritas. If you don't know what Veritas is, they have forgotten more about backup than most people on the planet will ever learn. These are all hiring managers who want to hire you. And they want to make sure that you have knowledge of important protocols and procedures, of attack models. Because as a security operations center, you have to know how the protocols work. In fact, I was talking to that guy with the beard. His name is Brian. He was saying, I need to hire somebody with a passion for the protocols. And all these women just thought that was great. That was absolutely correct. And they also said they need to understand the procedures on how to recognize attacks, but also how to turn around and say to an organization, look, here is how you solve the problem. Here are the next steps to take. Because if organizations don't respond properly to incidents, it's worse than just, okay, we got hit by ransomware and it's going to take us a month to fix it. It's worse than that. If you don't respond properly to an attack, you not only lose your job, you can get jail time. Organizations lose their reputation. So all of these things that you learn about protocols like how DNS works and DHCP and all these things, it's really important for you to know this because you give organizations the ability to move forward with confidence. So let's talk about risk, because risk is kind of the, as you could say, the opposite of confidence. Okay. So risk is important. This picture here, I want to show you. I was lucky enough to go to New Zealand here last year about this time. And I was able to walk along a pathway that was used in the filming of the first Lord of the Rings movie. If you've ever heard of Lord of the Rings, Bilbo and Frodo and all that, there's a point where I think it's Frodo and his friends are hiding from the evil Nazgul, and the Nazgul's looking after them and sniffing after them, and they're hiding in the trunks in the roots of this big, huge tree. Well, that tree was actually placed. It was a prop, was actually placed right there on that pathway where that bench is. The reason I bring this up about risk is because there's a quote from, I think it's Bilbo Baggins in there. He says, it's a dangerous thing walking out your front door, right? Well, risk is a danger. Risk is something, and danger is something that we all try to avoid. But as a security operations analyst, it's not just risk avoidance. It's kind of identifying what those risks are and delving deep into it. So you have to be risk averse in a sense of learning these protocols so you can help a company manage risk. But you need to have a curiosity for, well, why is it a risk? How is it a problem? And how can I solve it? If you have a passion for the protocols and a curiosity, you can become a security operations center analyst. Now, let me tell you a quick story about risk, a personal story. I love going to a place called the Oregon Coast. It's on the west coast of the United States. I love the Oregon Coast. And that's, in fact, a lighthouse called Hasita Head. It's in the middle of the Washington coast. It's a fun place to go. I took that picture, too. The Oregon Coast is a lot of fun because it has an element of risk to it, and it's a lot of fun. This here is something called Thor's Well, and if you look at the right part of that picture, you'll see some people's legs there. Those are my kids who I was teaching them how to run around that big, huge hole there that opens up, much to the chagrin of their mom. She doesn't appreciate that, but we have a good time. I tell you about this because I love kind of playing in the surf. I like scuba diving, I like kayaking, and this is me running away from a wave that was a little too big for comfort. But I love dealing with risk. And for example, here is a picture of a sign that I've seen for decades. I grew up seeing this sign, and you're not supposed to go past that sign because very quickly waves can come along. Well, one day I noticed, come on, it was really a calm day. So I went past the sign. There's me behind the sign where you're not supposed to be. You can see people are walking away from it because they don't want to see this. So I went down there, and guess what happened? Well, a wave came along and hit me pretty hard. That's me taking pictures of that wave kind of, just about knocking me down. What does that have to do with risk? Well, what we need are people who can identify when risk is happening, what the conditions are, when a wave is going to come along, whether it be a wave of attackers or whatever, right? And what we are looking for and what organizations are worried about are the new attack surfaces that are happening. Attack surface is a fancy phrase for saying, look, there are tools that you use every day, whether it be software on your workstations or your phone, or operational technology tools, or anything that's used technology is can be attacked, right? And we've brought the cloud in now. We use the cloud a lot now. We kind of have a cloud smart policy, and most organizations do, where you choose the cloud where it's appropriate. Well, we have organizations that have to combat supply chain issues. And that's a fancy phrase for saying, as we bring hardware into our organizations, or as we update software and bring that into our organizations, as we bring people, right, and hire people into organizations, or partner, governments partner all the time with private companies. As we partner in that, we bring risk into our organization. So we need security operations center analysts to manage that risk, to help us identify what the problems are, but also to help make sure that organizations are following rules, that they're following policies, that they're following regulations. Very important. And I like to use these terms, use the term guardrails for this. A lot of programmers will use the term guardrails to kind of explain, well, look, here's how, as we go along and do our work, to make sure we don't fall off the road, right? That we don't go off one side or the other of the road, that we have guardrails that keep us going. That's your job as a security analyst, to help companies follow along with these guardrails so that you don't fall off or get too close to an area of bad risk, so that a wave doesn't come along. And I've been lucky enough around the world to listen very carefully to hiring managers. These are folks in Singapore. Most of these people operate at a C level. In other words, they're CIOs, chief information officers, or they are chief information security officers. Some are CEOs. And they all, again, are looking for confidence. These are folks in Japan at something we call the HR Summit. These are all people who talk with me on a almost daily basis about the issues that they are confronting. Okay, so let's talk about some of the issues that they're confronting. That's a picture that I took of something called in Ireland called the Dunloe Gap. And I like to use that because people talk about security gaps, right, or gap analysis. That's part of security operations center, SOC analyst. But I kind of want to talk about what it is that companies are facing. So first of all, we are seeing critical infrastructure being attacked around the world. And by critical infrastructure, I'll even use a more specific term, critical infrastructure, right? Critical information infrastructure. And this is important to think about because these are all of the connections that make it possible for people to communicate from home to home, from city to city, state to state, country to country. And so we're talking about kind of data fabrics, and these are mesh networks that allow us to aggregate data, to communicate with each other. But we use fancy things like data lakes and all these things. But our job is really to kind of act as a sentinel or a guidepost or a lighthouse to make sure that organizations keep their infrastructure secure. So one of the first things that you need to learn if you want to become a security operations center analyst is how networks work. For example, I'll use a quick analogy. Imagine drops of rain. Well, what do drops of rain do? Well, they fall into puddles, don't they? Eventually, little streams, maybe into a lake or into a river, into large lakes, down into the ocean. Well, data is much the same way, right? As we generate data with our IoT devices, with our watches, and our computers that we use, our mobile phones, it's like drops of rain, and then it falls into puddles. Well, we need people to secure that data. But before you secure that data, you need to know how it works in the first place. You need to know how 5G works, how networking protocols like TCP/IP work, and things like that. You're looking at a couple of towers. The one on the left there is the old Tokyo Tower. The new one is on the right. That's the Tokyo Skytree. Really cool place. But we need people to understand how to secure that kind of infrastructure, how to secure data lakes. And by data lakes, I'm talking, for example, about the ability to capture data and store it so that you can crunch that data, not only to learn about security events, but there are a lot of people that will take these data lakes and they'll do huge marketing campaigns. Or there are governments that use these data lakes to make sure that they provide adequate services, health services to people, for example. Well, these are resources that you also secure. Well, where are attackers these days? People will say, well, they're in Russia, or they're next door, or they're in your company, or whatever. I would argue, after talking with all these people I've been telling you about, that they are in our applications, right? I'll put my money there. meaning that if hackers are going to attack us, they're probably going to go after the applications. Why? Well, that's kind of where the data is. That's where the money is, right? If that's where users are doing their work, right? Like right now, we're using an application, Microsoft Teams or Zoom or a video streaming application, right? Well, that's where hackers want to be too. So this is a list, or at least a representation of a lot of the elements that a security operations center worker has to protect. Okay, so applications and application programming interfaces. An API is something that allows you to communicate from organization to organization or from computer to computer. I like to think of an application programming interface with an analogy of a server. I think all of us have been to a restaurant before, right? Now, when you go to a restaurant, you usually sit down somewhere and a server, a waiter, he or she will come up and say, hey, how can I help you? What do you want to eat today, right? Well, that waiter, that server is basically an API because it's kind of an intermediary between you and the kitchen. Because if you went to a restaurant and walked right into the kitchen and said, hey, I'd like a hamburger, right? The cook would probably do one of two things. The cook would nicely say, well, thank you. Go talk to your server. Go talk to your waiter or waitress, or maybe would throw something at you. Kitchens are tough places. My point is that we need these APIs to mediate between our requests that we make, right, and the fulfillment of that request. Well, hackers love to attack APIs and applications. They love to attack storage. They love to attack the user sessions because that's where the money is, okay? Hackers are also taking advantage of what I call the IT-OT disconnect. IT is basically the servers that we use, web servers, database servers, the IoT devices, our mobile phones. Operational technology, again, are the wind turbines that generate electricity, for example, or things that oil derricks, oil drills that bring oil up from the ground from the North Sea or whatever. I've talked with people who basically say there's a major disconnect between these two types of technologies. And we need security analysts to help kind of analyze that and find it. We find, for example, this is research that we've conducted, and I won't go deep into this, but these are common problems that developers run into and people who who use the cloud run into. Identity access management, things like the misuse of storage where we don't use encryption properly. These are not just problems that one or two companies have. These are problems that hundreds of companies have. There are major problems with how we use serverless computing. Serverless computing is a fancy way of talking about the cloud. How instead of launching a web server and then getting Apache server going and then creating an application, we just use the cloud to just launch an application. We can kind of abstract out or get rid of the middle players there. The reason I bring this up is that serverless computing programs often seem to developers use them, they tend to kind of use the same keys, the same encryption. And once a hacker gets a hold of one, guess what? That hacker can spread from system to system to system. That's called lateral movement. This is one reason why ransomware can be an issue, and another reason why hacking into one user session can result in an attack across the board. So these are all examples of problems that are found in something that's called the OWASP Top 10. Won't go into great detail about the OWASP Top 10, but I just wanted to show you how the industry has shown security analysts, look, here are the kind of the top 10, maybe even top 5 issues that we can do security analytics for. But before you can do this, you don't have to become a programmer. But what you do need to know is you need to know how the protocols work and things. So here's some of the essential skills. When I say a passion for the protocols, you know how the protocols work, I'm talking about TCP, for example. This is the classic TCP handshake. That's a minor example of the kind of handshakes, the kind of communications that you need to be an expert in if you want to be a security operations center analyst. Another is HTTP and HTTPS. Right now, we're using HTTP to record this, to stream this session for you to listen to it. Web servers use it all the time. It uses a conversation or a dialogue as well. Then you can see there's about 4 steps involved there. HTTPS uses these, but the S stands for security, the encryption. Okay, so here is then the next time you go up to Amazon or Alibaba or wherever you go to buy something, this is how TLS works, transport layer security, what we usually call SSL, but it's transport layer security. This is the negotiation that browsers, applications, or whatever go through in order to start encrypting transmissions. And hackers love to go after steps 6 and 8, other steps too, to try to negotiate down the level of encryption so that instead of it being really, really high level encryption, they negotiate it down to something trivial that they can hack. So we need people who not necessarily become programmers at all, but they need to understand how these protocols work, how they talk to each other. Because if you want to use a tool such as Burp Suite as a pen tester, or maybe even as a security analyst, well, you got to know the conversation you're listening in on, right? I mean, if you're able to listen in on a conversation and it's a language that you or nobody else understands, that might have some value, but it's fairly limited, right? So what we need are workers who understand how attackers attack different technologies. And one of my things that I'll bring up often is we need security analysts who can listen in on the kind of hard to reach places, what I call the interstice. It's where one technology, such as a web server and a SQL server, a database server, talk to each other. And that connection point is, I call the interstice. That's where hackers love to manipulate things. For example, between a web server and a SQL server, you can have a hacker do something called a SQL injection attack. Well, we need security analysts to be able to identify what that is. And sure, there are all sorts of great tools out there, and vendors will sell them that can identify those really well. But we need workers who do more than just watch an application. They need to know how this networking stuff works. So we need people who can delve deeply into how a human being gets hacked with social engineering. So when a human being uses a text message, right? That's the human element, a brain, that technology connecting with texting or with Facebook Messenger or whatever tool you can think of. We use Slack at CompTIA. How do the people connect with that? When a human being uses email, trust me, most attacks happen through social engineering. So we need security analysts to go deep into these interstices, these connections where things happen. Because as a security analyst, you're implementing something called Locard's exchange principle. And that's a fancy principle. There was a guy, he was a Frenchman, I think. He died right around when I was born, maybe before then. But he basically made detective work possible because he came up with a rule, a principle that said any perpetrator of a crime will bring something to the crime scene, and then will take things away, but will also oftentimes, sometimes every time, leave something behind. And it was his principle that allowed people to start thinking about fingerprints and eventually DNA. Well, on the cybersecurity side of things, attackers leave behind evidence all the time. And we need people to identify the evidence, those data sets, and turn it into actionable information. That's what I mean by Locard's exchange principle, because we're looking for indicators of attack, and we're looking for indicators of compromise. That's two different things. Indicator of attack means that somebody has scanned you or has tried to attack you on some level. That leaves behind evidence. An indicator of compromise means that not only was your system attacked, but it actually succumbed, right? It actually fell. It actually experienced a problem where a hacker was able to grab data or what have you. So this is what you do with these data sets. You're looking for indicators of attack and indicators of compromise. And you're looking for the steps that hackers take as they conduct those attacks. You're looking at an old model. It's called the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. Lockheed Martin's a very large contractor in the United States. And years ago, decades ago, they came up with this model that hackers first do discovery or reconnaissance. And they look for vulnerabilities and they kind of say, well, look, I'm going to take that vulnerability, I'm going to create some code and weaponize, right? And create code and deliver that code and exploit that vulnerability. I'm going to install additional code or additional things that make it possible for me to take over. And I'll use command and control equipment, command and control protocols, things like that, to take actions on objectives, to steal data, to alter data, do all these things. Well, there's all sorts of models out there. There's the MITRE ATT&CK model. It's very similar. Notice instead of using the word reconnaissance, I think it uses the word initial recon, or the phrase right there. Then there's the initial compromise. You establish a foothold, you escalate privilege, and you do lateral movement to try to maintain that attack. Because once you get an initial compromise, it's a very precious and very temporary thing. If you're a good attacker, you're going to try to make it so that you can come back later. That's what I mean by maintaining presence. Well, and then you can complete your mission. So there are all sorts of models out there that you can kind of identify these. This is the diamond model. You can identify attacks, but you're looking for the tactics, the techniques, the procedures of what an attacker does. And you're not doing those attacks yourself. You're listening in on those attacks so you can identify the personality of a group of hackers or an individual hacker. I know people who work in the retail and the banking sector, governments, who literally can, by analyzing a few data sets, they can identify literally what an attacker's personality is. And I don't mean, whether they like chocolate or not, how they attack. That's what I mean, what their attack personality is. They can actually say, oh, it looks like that attacker that, tried to grab some things last week is back again, right? And that's because, for example, I was mentioning HTTP. It's a protocol that's used in many applications. Well, a lot of hackers try to imitate HTTP. They come up with their own code. They roll their own, as it were. They create their own applications. And yet, as they do that, the dialogue, right, changes a little bit. In other words, the personality or the character of that HTTP is changed. It doesn't look quite like what a web browser like Chrome or Safari would use. And so a good security analyst is able to delve into this and identify what's going on. A good security analyst uses cybersecurity threat intelligence, CTI, to kind of look and see, well, if there's a funny website going on here, how long has that website been around? They look around to get more data to identify things. So I find that the best security operations centers follow what I call the 3 C's. They collect data, they crunch data, and they contextualize it to turn it into information. That's what I mean by the 3 C's. So they look for this indicators of malicious activity, and then they kind of come up with a story. So they start maybe with packet captures like this, and you're looking at something that's a Wireshark packet capture. But many times when I talk to people who are security analysts, they will look at spreadsheets of data, okay? And they will do pivot tables and things like that, because they're trying to tame the 3 V's of data. The 3 V's are velocity, variety, and volume. In other words, velocity is coming at you fast. There's a ton of types of data, right? That's the variety. And then there's just a lot of it. That's the volume. Well, they tame it down and they look for patterns. Let me show you this real quick. This is a picture I took, and right in the middle there of that picture, there's what I guess as a hiker you would call a threat. Or some sort of problem. And that threat there was a grizzly bear. She wasn't very far away from me. And I even got closer. Being the fool that I am, I kind of ran towards her and wanted to take a picture, which I did. And that's her looking up at me, and I immediately began to walk away very quickly. I bring this up because, you could argue here is a threat actor. Look at that. You've identified a threat, right? And you could argue this could be a hacker that's going through a hacker life cycle, right? Well, we also look for patterns. And in the interest of time, I'll show you this pattern here very quickly. There's a bunch of volcanoes near where I live. Mount Rainier, Mount Adams, let's see, St. Helens, and Mount Hood, right? RASH, Rainier, Adams, St. Helens, Hood. You're looking at what Pacific Northwesterners will say, hey, the mountains were out. I saw rash today, right? Because it usually rains so much here, you never see them. I'm just showing you that security analysts look for patterns. So we take raw data and we start crunching numbers. So this raw data comes from a proxy server that I have. And I then started crunching the numbers using something called Elastic, the Elastic Stack. And I was able to make kind of nice pictures that showed, looky here, here's the system that got affected the most, which happened to be my router, 192.168.56.1. And I was able to show the protocols that were involved in the attack. So I identified a denial of service attack that was going on my router. This is what I mean by taking data sets and crunching them and things like that. So you're going to drill down and tease out actionable information on all these things. You're going to do layered security. And I don't mean layered security in terms of using lots of firewalls and intrusion detection. You're going to apply the 7 layers of the OSIRM, which basically describes how network protocols work. But you're also going to learn how to work with unofficial layers like layer 8, 9, and 10. These are the individuals. These are the organization. These are compliance and governance. You're going to work with so many different types of things, not only cool technology, but with cool people, because you're going to work to give the organization confidence that you know the protocols, the procedures, but also the processes of how your company works. So a security operations center analyst isn't just somebody who deals with tech all day long. They deal with people, and they deal with making people confident. So there are a lot of pathways out there for you to learn this stuff. Don't worry about, well, wow, I don't know where to get started. Don't worry about that, because we have pathways at CompTIA. At Netcom, we can show you this. Pathways for education are so important because tech moves so fast. It changes, it's mutable, it changes so fast. It's everywhere, and organizations that have kind of tried to get by but not using tech, believe it or not, very large, successful organizations have for decades held technology kind of at an arm's length. They can't do that anymore. So they need workers like you, like Security Operations Center analysts. And so we have pathways that will help you. And a certification like CompTIA, a training program like CompTIA, is going to help you get started as a security analyst. We have pathways to teach you the infrastructure that you're going to be monitoring as a security analyst. A+ teaches the endpoints. Network+ teaches the protocols. Then you start learning about things like all the endpoints. Linux runs almost everything these days, servers, etc. with Server+. Then you can go down the cybersecurity pathway and enter where it makes sense for you. Might be you know a lot of this stuff and you need to get right into the security. Might be that you need to kind of take a step back and go, okay, there are some areas I need to go before I start getting into security. So you enter where it makes sense. We have something called CYSA Plus that teaches what security analysts do, but some people are ready to take that. Other people, they need a few steps beforehand. We don't have formal prerequisites, but it's just you need to enter where it makes sense for you to join along. So at the end of this presentation, I want to give you some research to kind of help you keep direction. Okay, it's really important to me I like to do a lot of kayaking and hiking, and you got to bring a compass along with you, or maybe a GPS. But if you want to keep direction, there's this IT industry outlook that we put out every year. The 2023 outlook is out. The 2024 one will be coming out pretty soon. There's the state of cybersecurity. The 2022 one is out now. The 2023 will be coming out. Keep an eye on these things. This is great research that you can use to kind of get a sense of what is important as a security operations center analyst, or as a security worker, or just the IT profession in general. So thank you very much for your time. I have really appreciated you spending time with me to learn about what a SOC analyst does, how they manage risk, how they help an organization move forward with confidence by learning the technology at a deep level. If you want to download these slides, here you go. You could use the QR code or type in that really ugly URL there. So I'd be happy to have you learn those slides, and contact me as you wish. So thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it, and all the best.
Thank you, James. That was most informative. I know everyone is looking forward to the Q&A session, so go ahead and start putting your questions into the questions panel. And while you do that, and now I'd like to give the presentation rights over to Robin, our vendor manager, to introduce our promotions and webinar-related courses.
I would like to thank you all for attending this webinar on exploring the crucial role of Security Operations Center Analyst in cybersecurity. I sincerely hope that the knowledge gained through this session will help you leverage intelligence and threat detection techniques, will enable you to effectively respond and recover from cybersecurity incidents. In case you feel like revisiting this session for any future reference, please feel free to do so by clicking on the Access Recording button, and we would be more than happy to make it readily available to you. Next, I would like to offer you a glimpse of Netcom Learning's capabilities and why we are the best that there is when it comes to learning services, training, talent development, and beyond. I take pride to announce that Netcom Learning is the winner of 2023 Microsoft US Learning Partner of the Year award. Netcom Learning has been into the managed learning space for 2.5 decades now and have provided its services to 80% of the Fortune 1000 companies. Having a strong reputation in B2G sector, Netcom has served over 100 US military bases. We have trained over 1 million professionals to learn and grow in their respective fields across 36,000 enterprise clients. We cherish a recommendation rate of 96% from our customers. All these numbers I've just mentioned have been a result of our specially curated trainings delivered by a portfolio of 3,300 plus certified trainers. Moving ahead, being an authorized learning partner for CompTIA, I would like to announce Netcom Learning's upcoming schedule for CompTIA that are highly recommended for you to expand your horizon and knowledge around cybersecurity and its related fields. The upcoming schedules are visible on this handout on the slide. To add value to your learning curve, we encourage you to access our free on-demand trainings and blog posts, which are related to the cybersecurity. Moving ahead, I would like to give you a glimpse of our security skilling program. This is a specially curated program which is your one-stop solution for personal as well as organizational growth while protecting the businesses from cybersecurity threats. It is a comprehensive program with training on latest tools and technologies from top technology vendors like CompTIA, ET Council, IC Square, Microsoft, and AWS. We highly recommend you click on the Get Started Now button on the handout slide to explore the security skilling training that are highly customizable and are delivered by the top industry instructors through multiple modes of delivery across the globe. On the similar lines, and being a progressive learning organization, we have collaborated with EC Council to bring to you cybersecurity awareness training and phishing simulation solution. Nowadays, whether it is an individual or an organization, no one is safe from cybersecurity threats in today's growing digital landscape. With that in mind, this training solution is comprised of 90 plus interactive security awareness video courses for the end user that offers phishing simulation across various touch points such as voice, email, and text. We would be happy to offer you a demo that you can request by clicking on the request a demo button on the slide. You can also take advantage from Learning Passport, which is Netcom Learning's solution to a flexible team training. It is designed to be customized in line with the number of learners that you plan to train from top technology vendors like Microsoft, Cisco, Adobe, and more. Single package can be redeemed over 4,000 official courses with a validity of 12 months. Keeping in mind the requirement of our customers, we can further choose from learning saving passports or learning voucher passports as per your need and requirement. I would also like to introduce you to Netcom Plus Learners subscription, a learning solution that we have developed for our enterprise customers. All you are required to do is invest one time and reap the benefits of this unlimited access to authorized training from top technology vendors throughout a span of 12 months. As displayed on your screen, we deliver the subscription in three types of packages. Free or the silver package allow you to access 300 plus e-learning modules, or you can go for gold at $199. That gives you an access to 400 plus e-learning modules along with silver package benefits. Third, we have for you our best selling and most popular platinum package at $2,999 that gives you an access to 400 plus e-learning modules and 120 plus virtual instructor-led trainings in addition to the gold package. I would also recommend you to go through Netcom Learning's website for more information such as courses and certifications, our free virtual events, our blogs, and our currently running promotions. I sincerely hope we could add value to your knowledge base in the time you choose to spend with us during this webinar. For more information on such sessions and latest updates on IT and business training, please follow and give us a shout out on our LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter channels. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thanks so much for guiding us through all that information, Robin. And now we're going to go ahead and jump right into our question and answer session. If you haven't yet, it's not too late to pop your questions into the question panel. And as we start our Q&A sessions, we're also going to launch a quick poll that we want to invite you to participate in. Doing so helps us to know how we can better serve you by telling us who might be interested in more information or in taking some additional training. In addition, we have a lot more informative webinars coming up, so please go to netcomlearning.com/webinars in order to register. First question we have today is, how does automation and artificial intelligence impact the work of SOC analysts? And are there any potential risks or drawbacks associated with these technologies?
That's a great question. First of all, automation and artificial intelligence have been used in the Security Operations Center world for a long time now. For example, some of the first security SOC analysts that ever worked created spam filters. You know, spam filters, you know, that stop email spam from coming in. That's been using the naive Bayes algorithm of artificial intelligence for decades, right? So we use automation and we use artificial intelligence to identify repetitive patterns, right? So that instead of us analyzing them as human beings, we can't do it anywhere nearly as fast. So we use automation and artificial intelligence to identify the repetitive patterns. The danger is that much of the artificial intelligence that's used and much of the automation that's used, if you don't train it right, it'll go looking for the wrong stuff. Or it won't identify things. It'll see it, but it won't react properly. So one of the dangers is that if you rely too much on that rather than a good thinker, a good security analyst, you can have the tools miss things. But if you train things right, the automation right, and have a good dialogue between the human being and the software, the AI, then it's a very powerful tool, because the AI will do, and the automation will do 80% of the work. And then a human being can spend time evaluating things, which is what human beings, if they're trained right, can do very well.
Let's take another question. Can you share any real-world examples of case studies where SOC analysts played a crucial role in preventing or mitigating cyber attacks?
You bet. I'll give a couple examples. One of the first examples is where a security analyst basically identified some kind of odd activity. And the odd activity involved a protocol, HTTP, and this was in a bank, that was formed a bit differently than the rest of the HTTP on the network. And what she was able to do is identify that that was an attacker that was coming in trying to imitate kind of how should I say, sneak into the bit stream. And she was able to identify somebody who was trying to introduce ransomware to a zero-day flaw, a zero-day vulnerability on a particular series of database servers. And she was able to stop that attack because of her awareness of the protocols. So that's a very acute, specific attack, that was done in a matter of, took her just a few minutes to identify that. There's another person who I know is a security operations analyst who identified a long-term series of vulnerabilities over a period of months. She identified that there were systems that were coming online that had the same vulnerability. She was able to analyze the communications of those systems, how they responded to packets, and said, over time, we have about 100 systems that are vulnerable to a specific attack. And she was able to prioritize patching those systems. So that's kind of a chronic example of incident response. It took her a period of weeks and months to solve that problem.
Let's take one last question for the day before we wrap it up. Please suggest most recommended certifications or training programs that for individuals aspiring to become SOC analysts.
One of the things that's important to realize is that there are more job roles out there than just pen tester or just used to be people who always wanted to go into forensics. So some of the best programs that are there, for example, there's CompTIA CYSA Plus, and CYSA Plus stands for Cybersecurity Analyst, right? So there's that. But here's the thing, remember, you can't become a cybersecurity analyst and understand those things, attack patterns, threat models, if you don't know the protocols in the first place. So other important certifications out there could be any networking certification, Network Plus, right? I don't care if it's Cisco, I don't care whatever, just learn all the protocols that are out there. Then you need to understand endpoints. So A plus, yes, is a help desk cert, you could say, but I also see it as an endpoint cert. It teaches you how computers work, ARP address, MAC address, ARP, things like that. But there are various certification entities out there that do teach security analytics. But CompTIA is absolutely the first one that came out with a proper cybersecurity analytics one. And I always say go with the go with the innovators. So.
Once again, I want to remind you that as you leave the session today, you will be presented with a short survey. We would like to request for you to help us by taking a quick moment to participate in that survey. Your feedback really helps us understand your learning experience as we are constantly looking at how we can improve our future sessions. The survey answers are measured on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 representing outstanding and 1 representing poor. We want to thank all of you for joining us today, and if you do come up with any additional questions, feel free to send them to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope that you found today's webinar informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us soon. Feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Have a great day, everyone.